Hi, before we get onto the main film, I thought I'd just update you on the thermal imager that I did a YouTube film on quite recently. I've been using a pulsar thermal imager for a while, but I got to borrow for 2 weeks a Pixtra ARC A613 thermal imager. And at the end of the film, I still hadn't made up my mind which way to go. Well, finally I did, and I've decided to sell the pulsar and to buy the Pixtra. And the main reason for that, the overwhelming reason really, is it's so small. It fits in my coat pocket. When you went out with the Pulsar one, you had to carry it in a separate bag because it was too big for your pocket, and it was heavy and bulky. This is tiny, fits into your pocket, and there's hardly any weight to it. It's very, very lightweight. So that means you've got it with you a lot more often, so you're going to make a lot more use of it. It's very difficult to actually compare the image that you're looking at with the two thermal imagers, because one has got a very wide angle lens. This one's a 13mm lens. The other one has got, basically it's a small telephoto lens. I would guess it's something like a 70mm lens on a full chipped normal camera. So it's far more telephoto, so it's hard to compare the images, but they're both as clear as each other. They've both got the same resolution, and I think that's the most important number. And then in terms of the hot point that you're looking at, they both seem the same to me. I can't see any difference. I've just been using this to look for moorhens in front of me. They show up very clearly, and because of that wide angle lens on it, I'm not having to keep scanning backwards and forwards and up and down trying to find something. You can just see everything all at the same time. In an ideal world, you'd have an optical zoom lens on this. They've all got digital zoom on them, but an optical zoom, but as far as I know, I haven't come across any thermal imagers that have that. The only thing that frustrates me about this thing is the lens cap. It doesn't stay on very well, falls off very readily, so I've kept it onto this cord. It's attached by a cord, it comes like that, and then it irritates me that's flapping about. I'll probably come up with some sort of lens cap on my own that might be a better fit, I think, and then throw that away. But the main thing I want to talk about today is Topaz Video AI. Over the years, I've downloaded several trial versions of it, and I've never got anywhere with it. It's painfully slow. That seems to be universally recognised. It takes an awful long time to run, even on a fast desktop that I've got. And I've just dismissed it again. But I've downloaded the latest version, and they're always claiming to have speeded it up, and I've been playing around with it, and I've come across something really wonderful in it. I've known it does this for a while, but this is the first time I've really looked at it. You can now turn normal speed video into slow motion video without having to shoot in slow motion mode. And as soon as I realised I could do that, I got very excited, because I thought maybe I can do away with this Lumix G9 Mk2. It kind of irritates me that I have to keep swapping camera bodies. When I want to do my slow motion video, I tend to have to put the Lumix on, because the OM1 Mk2 will only shoot 60 frames per second in 4K. This will shoot 120 frames per second 4K and autofocus. And I love looking at slow motion bird pictures. It's just wonderful to see it. So I've been hanging on to this. I don't use it for stills photography at all, only for video. And it's irritating. I have to keep swapping camera bodies. As soon as you do that, you get the problem of dust on the sensor. The less you take your camera body off the lens, the less dust issues you're likely to have. And whereas the OM camera very rarely gets dust on the sensor, and if it does, it shakes it off all by itself. I don't have to do anything. This is far more prone to getting dust, and I've lost quite a few clips. Well, not lost, because you can recover it, but it's hard work getting rid of dust in the post-production. So, and then I've just got the fact I've never really got that used to this camera. This thing I can operate blindfolded. I'm so familiar with the settings. This, because it doesn't get nearly so much use, I'm not as familiar, and it slows you down. There are times when you have to stop and think about what you're doing. I don't have to stop and think with the OM camera. It would be really nice if I'd just got one system to use. Here's an annoying dust spot on the Lumix which I took recently, and everything I took that day had got this dust spot on it. Fortunately, I didn't take anything very special. Now, one thing I've always hesitated about between these two cameras is which has got the best autofocus in video mode. Now, the OM1 Mark I in video mode was pretty poor, but the Mark II was a big improvement. In stills mode, it was a marginal improvement, but the video is much better on the OM1 Mark II. It's put it in the same ballpark as the Lumix G9. Now, at times, I've convinced myself the Lumix has the edge and it's slightly better for video autofocus, but there's other days, perhaps in different lighting conditions or with a messy background, I've never pinned it down as to why, but other days I actually think the OM1 Mark II is doing the better job. So whichever is the best, it's a close call, whichever way it is. I really don't think the OM1 Mark I would have managed to have kept this moorhen in focus as it walked towards the camera. But the Mark II does quite a good job at it. Even towards the end here, when there's vegetation starting to get in the way, it still keeps the moorhen in focus. So first of all, let's look at the image quality difference of video taken on the OM1 Mark II and the Lumix G9 Mark II. I'm going to show you some grey herons, 6 clips, 3 of them taken on the OM1, 3 of them on the Lumix, and see if you can see any difference between them. I'm not going to tell you which is which, and in fact I can't actually remember, although I can look it up. I'm just showing you this because I can't see any difference between them. The Lumix has the better reputation for video. The OM cameras are supposed to be quite poor, but to me they look the same. So I'm quite happy whichever camera I'm using, and I don't shoot log files, so that really just doesn't affect me. Now this clip is taken with the OM1 Mark II and it's at normal speed. And this grey heron is about to strike a fish. And it would have been nice if I'd been filming that in slow motion. Now in post-production software, Power Director in my case, I can slow it down. But it's jerky because each frame has to stay on the screen longer. If you want it to be 5 times slower, each frame has to stay on the screen 5 times longer. This clip, however, is done in the Topaz software, and it is a lot smoother. I've actually done this at 8 times slow, which I think is very similar to the previous clip, but it's not so jerky. It's just as smooth as if you'd taken this in slow motion. So what have they actually done? Well, if we look at this 1 frame at a time, there's the first frame just as the bird's head starts to go down. Second frame, and then the 3rd frame just touching the water on the 3rd frame, and then the 4th frame the bird's head's in the water. So that's from the initial clip. Now let's look at the clip that the Topaz software created. This is frame number 1, number 2, 3, 4. It has obviously created extra frames that weren't actually photographed at the time. It's used artificial intelligence to create frames in between frames. Now some of these don't look particularly sharp, but if you go back to the original frames, they're not very sharp either. The bird's head is moving towards the water. So I'll rerun that Topaz clip. This is about 8 times slow, and it looks very, very smooth. It took about 30 minutes to process this one clip, whereas if I do it in the Power Director software, it's instant. But if it's got to create all those extra frames, it's no wonder it's slow, and the computer gets very warm as well. I've never known my computer get warm before. I showed this flock of black-tailed godwits in my recent Snettisham film, but it's a good example, so I'll show it again. They're moving at quite a pace. Can the Topaz software slow this down with a mass of birds in the picture? I was having enough trouble following it with the lens. This is the Topaz result. all of those birds, and it's managed to recreate individual frames in between the real frames, 8 times slow again. That's just outstanding. How can it do that? Now, it doesn't work in every circumstance. I took this rook picture a long time ago. It could even have been on my Canon cameras, I don't remember. But I always regretted I didn't do it in slow motion. It's burying a sweet chestnut. What does the Topaz make of this? Not so good. Did you see that blur as it picked the sweet chestnut up? And watch the piece of grass flying through the air. It can't cope with that complicated background. So it works against the sky, or in the heron's case against a reed bed behind it, but it's struggling with this. Or is there something about Canon cameras that it couldn't cope with? I've tried the few options that there are within the Topaz software, but I haven't been able to improve upon this. But watch his head now. The head distorts very badly. So it isn't perfect, but there's going to be a lot of occasions when I'm going to want to make use of this software where I didn't shoot slow motion and I wanted to. It's worth saying that the rook is the only thing that it's done a very poor job on so far. I've tried several other clips, including this very recent brown hare footage. Now notice the vegetation that it knocks as it runs past it. Doesn't do a bad job with that. It could be there's something about the way the rook footage was taken, and it was a long time ago, so I can't remember any of the equipment that I used. Now as this brown hare runs off, you can see the legs are not absolutely perfect, but it's pretty good, and maybe I just needed to have been using a faster shutter speed at the time. But in a cluttered background, I think that's done a very good job. Now what this Topaz software is mostly known for is upscaling, taking say HD footage and turning it into 4K footage. So that's what we're going to look at here. This was taken in slow motion, it was taken in HD, and then I'm going to upscale it to 4K footage. So this is the original, and now I'm going to show you what Topaz has done with it, turn it into 4K. Is there an improvement? Well, there is, but it's very slight. I wouldn't say it's made it up to 4K, but it is better, but only marginally, and therefore on YouTube I don't think you'll be able to see it, but I can see a small difference, a small improvement on a large screen. Now I've showed this footage before in my recent red grouse film, but it's worth showing again. The other thing the Topaz software can do is to reduce vibration. Now other software can do that, but they always crop the image slightly, making the bird tighter in the frame. The Topaz software can reduce the vibration and keep the image size the same. There's no cropping. So this is the original footage. You can see the vibration, and this is the Topaz footage. It's brightened the image up as well, but it's got rid of the vibration, but it's left the grouse the same size in the frame. Thanks for watching.